Hey guys, Tom Barton from TomBartonSports.com here. We are going to go over a very interesting topic today, and that is I'm making the case that Clayton Kershaw is the greatest pitcher that has ever lived. We're going to get into that and more. Guys, if you like the video, please press down below. Make sure you press the like button. Subscribe to my channel. I could use all the subscribes. Tell your friends and go check me out. Tom Barton Sports over on Twitter and TomBartonSports.com. Also, you want to hit me up. It's TomBartonSports@gmail.com. All right, let's get into it, guys. Clayton Kershaw, it's been a lightning rod. It's been something I've talked about on my radio shows for nearly a decade. Now, full disclosure, look, my father was a Dodger fan. He was a Brooklyn Dodger fan that became a Dodger fan, but he never got to see Clayton Kershaw play, okay? I'm a Yankee fan. I'm a Dodger hater generally. Tom, why are you wearing a Dodger jersey? Well, because I wear jerseys for the videos, okay? And I thought it would be perfect here. But Clayton Kershaw, over the course of his entire career, has been pretty much my favorite player to watch that is not wearing a New York Yankees jersey and not named Mike Trout. He's that kind of guy because I like superior pitching, so I started to really enjoy him. And about 3 or 4 years ago, I got into the notion of, wow, Kershaw is becoming the greatest ever. And it really started to pick up steam, and I want to lay out the case because when you do start to lay out the case of greatest ever, everybody seems to chime in about their generation and their time and what it all is. So I'm going to lay it all out there with a very unbiased opinion, a lot of numbers, a lot of statistics, and really a lot of other people doing the talking for me. But I do want to lay it out there that Clayton Kershaw very well may be the greatest pitcher that's ever lived. We'll come to that conclusion together as the show goes on. So I think the first thing you have to say is, look, Clayton Kershaw, the negatives are there. He still doesn't have 3,000 strikeouts. He still doesn't have 200 wins, okay? Those are massive indicators. I know he won his 100th win at home recently, okay? He is a lot of tremendous things, but you do have those negatives. Now, the postseason's going to be what everybody jumps on. Everyone is going to jump on the postseason or the lack of postseason consistency from him. And I say consistency because it hasn't been all bad. If you really look at it and you look at the postseasons, he's had good starts, he's had bad starts. But the last postseason, well, you know what? Clayton Kershaw looked really good. He had under a 3 ERA, 2.93, 4-1 record. That was fantastic. 37 strikeouts in 30 innings, and Clayton Kershaw was absolutely fantastic. He won Game 1, he won Game 5 of the World Series, and the Dodgers got a championship ring. Now, even saying that rolls off the tongue weird for me because the bubble championships really don't count. They really don't. But Kershaw's numbers, when you're talking about numbers, you have to include them. Now, if you want to tell me I don't look at the Dodgers rings the same, no, I don't either. And I don't look at LeBron's rings the same. And the bubble rings are kind of a joke. And if Dave Roberts, you know what, you've lost more than you won. All that I understand. But we're talking about numbers. And when you're talking about greatest ever, baseball numbers matter. Clayton Kershaw hasn't been atrocious in the postseason like people make him out to be. He's had good starts and he's had terrible starts. And you do look at that. He's got a couple of good starts and then boom, he gives up like 6 to St. Louis and it blows everything up. So these are the negatives that are out there. I'm not saying that they're not out there. They are, okay? But Clayton Kershaw is still the greatest pitcher that's ever lived. And here's why. First, before we kind of come to that conclusion, I think we need to come to the conclusion that Clayton Kershaw, first things first, is he the greatest Dodger pitcher that ever lived? And I think that that's not an easy answer because you have guys like Drysdale, guys like Sandy Koufax, of course, and even Oral Hershiser. But I'll take it from this. Clayton Kershaw was the topic on the Dan Patrick Show with Oral Hershiser. And Oral Hershiser, 1998 Cy Young Award winner. Basically, this was, oh, by the way, this was 2 years ago. At that time, 2 years ago, before the bubble and all of that, Oral Hershiser said, he's unbelievable in any generation. That's the best pitcher to have ever lived. That's the best pitcher that has ever lived. He's ridiculous. So Oral Hershiser believes Clayton Kershaw is the best pitcher of all time. I get it. Look, the arguments are out there that Brady says Rodgers is amazing and Rodgers says Brady's amazing. And sometimes praise is just heaped upon him. But Oral Hershiser really has good ties and good connections with the Dodgers. He's very close personal friends with Sandy Koufax. He's in that kind of realm. To say something like this, he had to know he's going to get a little bit of a pushback. He had to know. Dan Patrick kind of said, Is it the best stuff? Is that what you're talking about? Because you couldn't believe that he would say this. He said no. And that's a great question. No, it's not the best stuff. He's just the most consistent, and he's the best that's ever lived. So Clayton Kershaw, who at the time didn't have a World Series ring, and you could argue maybe doesn't, right? At the time, what his accomplishments were are absolutely phenomenal. He's still an MVP, still a 7-time All-Star, still a 3-time Cy Young Award winner. I mean, you know what he is. Sandy Koufax, though, okay, still has a lot of those Dodger records. Sandy Koufax still leads some of them. This year, though, Kershaw's going to break a lot of these records. Kershaw's going to go out and break a lot of them. And we already saw what Kershaw looks like with a little bit of rest. He was pulled out of a perfect game, 13 strikeouts, looked phenomenal in that game. And Kershaw at his best is still that. Here's the thing. Kershaw hasn't been at his best in the last couple of years. And Kershaw at his not best, still a top 20 pitcher in the league. Maybe top 10, right? Maybe top 10. So you start to go about that and you say, well, wait a minute. He's past Sandy Koufax among wins. He's going to pass Don Sutton for Dodger wins. And we're still talking about Clayton Kershaw against Sandy Koufax. And I think that is what we need to really focus on here before we go into generational talent. Is he the greatest Dodger pitcher that's ever lived? I think it's easy to say he's better than Hershiser. So that brings up Drysdale. And you look at the numbers. Look, Don Drysdale and a lot of Brooklyn Dodger, you can see the Brooklyn Dodger hat over my shoulder. A lot of Brooklyn Dodger fans will tell me I'm crazy. You love Drysdale. Comparison numbers, he's just not close with Kershaw. He's just not there with Kershaw with accomplishments and whatnot. But we can take a look at Sandy Koufax. And Koufax is kind of the guy that everybody continuously goes to. Sandy Koufax is the go-to guy because when Koufax was great, many people say he was the greatest of all time. So once we establish that that Kershaw is better than Koufax, we could talk about who else is left, right? I don't think it's a crazy statement that he's better. I really don't. I don't think it's as nuts as people make it out to seem. You look at Clayton Kershaw and you go, no, he's just better. He just is. Clayton Kershaw, and you look at his career and the longevity. Clayton Kershaw's career is not done yet. The guy's just over 30 years old. It's not done yet. But he still had a longer longevity kind of career than Sandy Koufax. Sandy Koufax, we always talk about Don Mattingly only have about 5 years. Sandy Koufax had 5-year run. From 62 to 66, unbelievable run. During that time, he led the NL in ERA, all 5 years, every year over the 5-year span. He had 3 Cy Youngs every year over that 5-year span. Okay? He had an MVP. Yeah, he was unbelievable over that span. But here's the thing. Let's take Clayton Kershaw's best 5 years. 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015. Okay? Now, against 62 to 66. Kershaw was 88-33. Koufax went 111-34. All right. Koufax has the wins, which again, I think we've proven in this day and age, wins don't really mean a lot, but Kershaw loses to the wins. 1 point for Koufax. 2.11 ERA for Kershaw, 195 for Koufax. Very comparable again. Right there. I mean, it's right there. You give a slight win to Koufax, but he's got the win. ERA plus, 167, 172. Slight win there. WAR, 40.8 to 36.5. Slight win for Koufax there. So you go, okay, and I don't count things like no-hitters and whatnot. Cy Young Awards, 3-3. So Koufax, over that 5 years, he's better. He is better. But he's not marketably better. It's not massively better. And then you go, wait a minute. What was Kershaw after that? Okay? Because Koufax after that kind of fell apart. Kershaw after that, probably going to win another 100 games, right? He's after that, from 2016 on, going into this year, he's at more than 70, okay? So when all is said and done, he's going to win another 100 games after the peak years. Remember, Koufax didn't really have much to say after that. His ERA is about 2.5 after that peak. After that peak, take those peak numbers. They were comparable. Now, after the peak, he's right there. ERA plus 1.58 or 158. WAR, 20.1. So So Sandy Koufax was amazing for 5 years. He was better than Kershaw for 5 years. Not marketably better, but better, okay? More wins, slightly lower ERA. He was better. But the years between that, the years that you're sandwiching, the non-peak years are still Hall of Fame worthy years for Clayton Kershaw. Okay, and that really is the key here. You look at Koufax, who he was, the generation he was in, the strikeouts that he was. You can break down the numbers of the leaders in each category and the leaders of what they were. Kershaw was every bit as dominant, but he did it for a much longer period of time. So while Sandy Koufax, I give you guys, you Dodger enthusiasts, right? The old school Dodger, guys that are going to scream and yell that Koufax is better because he's the best I ever saw in 5 years. Well, let me tell you something. Don Mattingly is the best baseball player I ever saw for a 5-year span. Baseball player. I love him, but he's not Mike Trout, guys, right? I love him, but he's not Ken Griffey Jr. Sandy Koufax was the best pitcher, maybe, of all time for 5 years. His outside numbers, though, when you get outside of those 5 years, they don't compare to Kershaw. Kershaw still maintains almost that level. 2.5 ERA for the 5 years after his peak years. I mean, that's Clayton Kershaw in a nutshell. The consistency and the longevity. I know he's still a young man, but the longevity. Clayton Kershaw will eventually get to 200. He may get to 3,000 strikeouts. I mean, it's possible. Well, the way that bodies are nowadays. So Clayton Kershaw's overall numbers, he is better than Sandy Koufax. So let's look at who might also compare here. I think we have to separate things. First of all, I'm not including relief pitchers. All right, so I'm not including Mariano Rivera, greatest pitcher in the history of baseball for 1 inning, right? And that's not to disparage Mariano, who's my favorite player of all time, but we can't include relievers here. So just starting pitchers. And I have a very difficult time including dead ball pitchers. They may be better. They may. But guys like Kid Nichols, how do I include Kid Nichols in this with a 2.96 ERA? Ed Walsh with a 1.82 ERA. So, I'm going to go out there and say the only names that kind of could go there, Walter Johnson, Cy Young, Christy Mathewson. All right, those are the three. Walter Johnson, 2.17 ERA. You can't argue with that. 3,509 strikeouts. Not quite there yet. He's going to have more innings than anybody. He's going to have more complete games than anybody. He's got 417 wins. No one's coming close to that. Cy Young, 511 wins. No one's coming close to that. 1.38 ERA plus. Unbelievable. 2.63 ERA. Christy Mathewson, who I think is constantly underrated, by the way. 373 wins. Fantastic in the postseason. 2.56 overall ERA. 1.35 ERA plus. Unbelievable. He's got 5,000 innings under his belt. 5,200 innings almost. 2,000 strikeouts. Look, when you're talking about these three, you could almost interchange them. I think that Christy Mathewson, when you include postseason, might be the best of the bunch. There's an award named after Cy Young for a reason. Walter Johnson, the big train, might be number one overall. I have a hard time arguing that Kershaw's better than all of them. But while I give dead ball era hitters a little bump up, guys like Ruth that everyone always rips apart and Ty Cobb that everybody wants to kind of forget because of the new age, Barry Bonds is better garbage. I give a bump up to the dead ball hitters because it's the dead ball era. So I gotta just give a little bit nudge down then to the dead ball pitchers, which is very hard to compare numbers. It's very difficult to compare statistics in that day and age. It's a completely different game. So if you want to jump on your soapbox at the end of this and tell me, look, Clayton Kershaw is not Walter Johnson. Clayton Kershaw is not Cy Young. I'm going to have a hard time with that argument. And you're probably going to win it at the end of the day because I'm just going to give up because it's a different game. So let's stay with more of his contemporaries, and that is after the dead ball era. And you start to get into guys, Jack Morris, Andy Pettitte, good players. They're not there. Felix Hernandez had a run there. I mentioned Oral Hershiser, David Cohns of the bunch, and Don Drysdale. I don't want to breeze over what he did. Look, he got 3 strikeout titles. In 1962, he won the Cy Young Award. And he, by the way, was a number 2. He wasn't a number 1. You look at what he does in World Series play, he was really good. He was only 3-3, but he had under a 3 ERA. So that makes sense. he's got 3 championships in 14 years. Drysdale's very good. I put Drysdale outside of the top 25, but I don't want to discount Don Drysdale. You look at guys like Gaylord Perry and Dizzy Dean, sure, all among some of the best ever. Robin Roberts, I don't want to forget. Lefty Gomez, who seemingly the Yankees constantly forget. And then you get into more names that everybody that's watching this is probably going to remember. Tom Glavine, very good, just not Kershaw. Okay? I mean, look, he's just not that guy to talk about. He's got longevity awards. Okay? He won 305 games, 3.54 ERA. And you start to just look at him and go, okay, he's got a Cy Young in 1991, 98. Kershaw's got him in Cy Youngs. Kershaw's got him in ERA. Kershaw's got him in wins. Kershaw's gonna beat him in a lot of. Jacob deGrom is the new fashionable name. Jacob deGrom. Jacob DeGlass is what they call him because he can't stay healthy. Jacob deGrom right now will not have the career numbers. Again, for a short period of time, deGrom has been fantastic. He's not going to have the career numbers, and he doesn't have them right now to sit back and compare. Same thing with John Smoltz. Smoltz, I love him, but he was a reliever. He was there. He was, coming back from Tommy John. And for whatever reason, he only won 209 games, which you're looking at Kershaw, he should go over that. 3.40 ERA. I will say this about John Smoltz. Very potentially the best postseason pitcher I've ever seen. Same thing with Jack Morris, so you got to throw him in there. Now you get into what I consider like my top 20. Roy Halladay is into the top 20. Roy Halladay is a really good comparison of what we're looking at for him. I mean, Yohan Santana was there for a little while, but Halladay won the Cy Young in 2003, NL Cy Young in 2010. That's interesting. A no-hitter in the playoffs. I love Roy Halladay. But Roy Halladay's career numbers are just not going to stand up the right way. 203 wins. Hey, he's got 200 wins. It's more than Kershaw right now. Again, Kershaw's career isn't there. 3.38 ERA, 2,100 strikeouts. Just going to fall a little bit short. Same thing with Max Scherzer. Now, Max Scherzer could continue to build this resume. Max Scherzer falls a little short. Bob Feller, fantastic 4 straight AL strikeout titles. AL MVP. He finished in the top 3 separate times. Again, ERA a little bit inflated, a little bit different kind of area. So I don't put him there. Jim Palmer is inside the top 20. Curt Schilling inside the top 20. Weird, he's not in the Hall of Fame. Warren Spahn, certainly inside the top 20. He played 21 years, won 363 games. That's the most out of any left-hander. So I guess we should be comparing to the left-handers. But again, while he won 20 games, 13 times, 17-time All-Star, you look at him and you go, yeah, he's really, really good. And he's maybe a borderline top 10 guy. But at the end of the day, Kershaw is going to have more eye-popping numbers, more Cy Young kind of names. Justin Verlander is right there. But Verlander and Kershaw, we've watched both of their careers. Kershaw has been better. Now, I know Verlander added a Cy Young in 2019, and if he continues on this pace, Verlander is going to be an interesting choice for top 10. I think he falls a little short. Steve Carlton, 4 Cy Youngs. All right, now we're getting into this top 10 range, or just about. Carlton, right there. Carlton was fantastic. Carlton is a guy that you go back and you go 4,000 strikeouts. He ranks 4th all time. Steve Carlton might be the best left-hander of all time outside of Clayton Kershaw. I'm not disparaging him at all, but his overall giant numbers, when you're talking about what he's going to be, he's going to fall a little bit short when the dominance comes to term. Now, 4 Cy Youngs is great, but Kershaw's done it again for a little bit longer, more dominant for a little bit longer. Whitey Ford, if you want a World Series pitcher, Whitey Ford's the guy. I mean, that's really what it is. You want a World Series, if you're basing this heavily on World Series, Whitey Ford might be your guy. Nolan Ryan, look, Nolan Ryan to me is probably number 2. No, probably number 2. The strikeouts are amazing. The Cy Youngs didn't come. He had a lot of walks. He didn't win a lot of games, and a lot of people hold that against him. Carl Hubble is a name we want to mention. Tom Seaver, they just erected a statue in New York for Tom Seaver. He's got to be among the top 5 as well. 311 wins, 2.86 ERA, 4,700 innings. His longevity almost works against him, but he's got the 3 Cy Youngs as well. Sandy, we went over Sandy. Bob Gibson, the guy that everyone goes, oh man, throw inside. We still bring up Bob Gibson. World Series MVP in 64, World Series MVP in 67. That's something that Kershaw will never have. 7-2 with a 1.89 ERA, 8 complete games in the World Series. Again, I mentioned Whitey Ford. Bob Gibson might be your World Series guy. I have to take this as best pitcher ever. You can't just look at World Series numbers and give them such an inflated number. Look, he's a really good pitcher, and he had one of the greatest seasons of all time, if not the greatest season of all time. Bob Gibson's got to kind of be in that top 5. Lefty Grove. Lefty Grove is a guy that's got to be in that top 5. Roger Clemens, I don't know what you guys think about him. I don't know where you want to put Roger Clemens. When I watched Clemens, at the time that I watched Clemens, before the steroid controversy, he was the best that I've ever seen. Randy Johnson was very, very good for a long time, but he had a lot of inconsistency over the course of his career. Started out, couldn't find the strike zone. He does have a Cy Young Award in 1995, right? He's got a bunch of top 5 finishes, big time, absolutely contributor in the World Series. But Randy Johnson's a guy, front end, back end of his career, just didn't have it. Greg Maddux is somebody I'm listening to an argument for. Greg Maddux, I'm sitting here and I'm going, okay, NL Cy Young with the Cubs. Then he goes to the Braves, and he gets, you want to talk about a 5-year span. How about this? 1993, 20 and 10, 2.63. 1994, 16 and 6, 1.56. 1995, 19 and 2, 1.63. 96, 15 and 11, 2.72. 97, 19 and 4, 2.20. 98, 18 and 9, 2.22. Unbelievable. I mean, it's incredible what Maddux could do. And if you want to argue Maddux at 1, you got an argument. You do. I think to me, I got Ryan probably at 2, Maddux at 3. Pedro Martinez is the next guy that always comes up. And Pedro Martinez went on a ridiculous run himself when you're talking about 1.90, 2.89, 2.07, 1.74, 2.39, 2.26, 2.22. Martinez was great too. One thing I'll say about Pedro Martinez, everyone's going to look at Clayton Kershaw and they're going to go, wait a minute, he doesn't perform well in the playoffs. Pedro said it himself. The Yankees owned him, and I watched Pedro Martinez in big spots during the regular season kind of come up short. I watched Pedro Martinez with a very short career as well. I watched Pedro Martinez in spots where how much are we paying attention to just that chunk, like the Sandy Koufax chunk? If I'm only paying attention to that chunk, that span, well, I'm giving Koufax over Pedro, but both of them to me get kind of knocked down, and I have them both behind Greg Maddux, to be honest with you. So it leaves me with number 1, and that is Clayton Kershaw, a man who is still pitching right now and can add to this resume. That's Clayton Kershaw. That's who we're looking at. Clayton Kershaw is the best. He is the best ERA plus ever for anyone with 1,000 innings. That's ever. That should speak to the absolute longevity as well as the pure dominance that he's been there. You look at almost 1,000 pitchers fit that kind of list, and he's number 1. In his 5-year span, you have a few contemporaries, Pedro, Maddux, and Koufax. 3 players in the history of baseball can compare to his 5-year span where he had a 2.10 ERA over 5 years. Struck out more than 10 guys per 9 innings, 7 All-Star selections, an MVP. Not a lot of pitchers get an MVP. 3 Cy Young Awards. And he's still going. When I look at Clayton Kershaw and I look at the small ballparks and I look at the tremendous power hitting that we have nowadays, setting records year after year. Everyone looks at the steroid era. Wait a minute. Every year was setting home run records. When I look at the physical training that the players are going through. And then I look at who Clayton Kershaw has been. He didn't have a weak start to his career like a Randy Johnson. And so far, where he is right now, he's not having a weak end to his career like some other greats. No, we are in the middle of this. And maybe I'm going to look at Clayton Kershaw differently if he hangs on for 5 more years and becomes a mediocre pitcher. But this is a pitcher who last week was pulled out of a perfect game. When he's been done, his fastball mile per hour was down by 2. 2 ticks. Didn't matter. Struck out 13 and had a perfect game at this age when he's supposedly over the hill. Would anybody put it out of their mind right now that Clayton Kershaw could win another Cy Young this year? If he stays healthy, he certainly can. So he's on a good team. He'll get to the playoffs again. He'll be able to build that playoff resume, bring down that playoff ERA, maybe bring down that World Series ERA. Is there time for the rest of you guys to come to my side and start realizing that Clayton Kershaw is just that, the greatest pitcher that we've ever seen? All right, guys, let me know who you like. Are you Pedro guy, Nolan Ryan guy? Do we go back and scream about Koufax? Maddox, maybe? Roger Clemens? Oh, the steroids. I didn't really get into that. You let me know, please, on the comments below. You can always write me at Tom Barton Sports over on Twitter as well. And please like this and make sure that you share it out there. Let me know. I really want to know your guys' thoughts. That's going to do it for me, everybody. Have a very good day.